All right, well, it's about 12:01, so we're going to get started here. My name's Jasmine, and I'm going to be facilitating this call. I work on employee safety and well-being team, and I'm here today with Josie, who is a registered dietitian on our lifestyle medicine team. She teaches a number of community nutrition education courses and healthy cooking classes, and then she's the facilitator of the Complete Health Improvement Program, also known as CHIP. She's here today because she has a special interest in plant-based eating, and the objective of that is to reduce chronic disease and optimize overall health. As many of you might not know, Josie earned her bachelor's degree from University of Idaho, go Vandals, and enjoys in her spare time mountain biking and running. So with that, I'm going to hand the floor over to Josie. A couple of rules of engagement for today. We ask that you keep your microphones on mute. And any questions or comments you have, you can throw in the chat bar. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end of the recording, or excuse me, end of the presentation. And just a side note, I am recording. So this will be live after we conclude today. So with that, Josie, go ahead.
Cool. Well, welcome. I'm excited everyone can join today. I'm a lifestyle medicine dietitian, so I primarily work over at the Lifestyle Medicine Clinic, which I was telling Jasmine, we're way out in the boonies over here off of Eagle and Amity in the South Meridian YMCA. But don't let that deter you from any of my classes or opportunities I'm going to talk about, because we're doing a lot of it virtual on Microsoft Teams, so it's more accessible than ever. And so what I'm going to do today is give you a brief introduction of whole food plant-based eating. This is a class that I teach all the time. It's usually over an hour. I've kind of condensed it down for 30 minutes. So I'm going to go through kind of what is a plant-based diet, what are the benefits, tips for getting started if it's something that you're interested in doing, which I'm sure you will be after this talk. And then really, maybe you caught it when we were chatting, but I'm going to go through how you can sign up for the other classes. Our classes and programs are offered to anyone in the community. So you can be an employee, a patient, or just a community member. And we've got classes for $10 a piece. They're all going to be around plant-based eating. We have virtual cooking classes that are available. We've got 5 different ones that we do. They are awesome. They are cheap and they're more accessible than ever. And so I'm going to show you how you can access those and sign up for those if you're interested in learning more. All righty. So real quick, before we get started, I want you guys to use the chat box, a little engagement here. Which do you think is true about plant-based eating? Maybe you've heard of it before, maybe you have no idea what I'm talking about, so maybe you can just take a guess. But A, B, C, D, or E, do you think a plant-based diet is going to be more expensive? It means going vegan. C, plant-based eating is always healthy. D, it's going to be hard to get enough protein if you eat a plant-based diet. Or E, not filling. Go ahead, I'll give you a second to type in. Good. A lot of the same. Very good. Lots of C's. I see some A's and E's. Actually, this was a trick question. None of these are true. These are some of the main myths and misconceptions about plant-based eating. I'm going to break all this down today. But see, all plant-based foods are not healthy, and I'm gonna get to that here in a second. I see Callie shaking her head no, but we'll talk about that. So first, I want to tell you what is a whole food plant-based diet. So this is the definition I use here is plant-based diet is maximizing the intake of whole plant foods while minimizing the intake of the more processed and animal-derived foods. So whole plant foods, or I like this terminology, foods as grown, or thinking like, do these foods look like they did as they grew out of the ground or as they were harvested? So in their most natural state. So we're talking fruits and vegetables, whole unprocessed grains. The legume family, so lots of beans, chickpeas, split peas, lentils, mushrooms, using fresh herbs and spices and nuts and seeds. We want to maximize those and then minimize the meat. And that includes chicken and fish. We're not just talking like steak and processed meat, chicken and fish, minimizing those, dairy products, eggs. And really a big one is reducing the highly processed foods that are loaded with sugars, oils, salt. We just want to cut back on those. and I want to point out here, I'm using the words maximize and minimize. We are not promoting an all or nothing approach. I'm going to show you kind of a spectrum of plant-based eating here in a little bit, but really what we're wanting to do is maximize the amount of plants that are on our plate. Thinking, right now in the United States, most people build a plate where the meat is kind of the star of the show, and then we think of it, vegetables, as something we have to put on our plate, or it's like the overcooked side dish and it doesn't have a whole lot of pizzazz. But we're trying to flip that. We want the plants, maybe some vegetables, some grains and beans as the foundation, and then maybe thinking of a piece of chicken as the garnish, or maybe thinking of that as the side. So just kind of rewiring and adding more plants to the diet. And I recently threw this in because this is a really nice graphic to kind of break down the differences in these diets, because I hear all the time, oh, you're going to tell me to eat vegan, or I see people starting to eat plant-based, and it's not necessarily the healthiest foods. Plant-based is becoming a very catchy marketing term. I even recently have started seeing there's like household cleaners that are plant-based. You can get all these plant-based fake meats, and there's plant-based, and they're loaded with oils and sugar and salts and that, and they can still be heavily processed foods. So you can kind of see the differences with this chart, and this is from Forks Over Knives, which is a great resource if you're looking for recipes or just education. And also with the vegan diet, it's very restrictive. You see these red X's here. There's no animal products at all, but it still allows also a lot of junk food. You can eat chips and crackers and candy and soda and all these, fried foods and that, and be vegan. But it's not necessarily a health promoting diet. Whole food plant-based differs because we're talking about what we do eat, not necessarily what we avoid. That's what a vegan diet does, but what we do eat. We're eating lots of whole grains, beans, vegetables, starchy vegetables, having fruits, nuts, and seeds. That's the foundation. And then it's not that you can't ever eat these foods. You see the yellow thing here says avoid. So that's kind of the differences there. A lot of products are starting to use this angle, or even vegan, that's often. But again, these aren't necessarily health promoting diets. They still can allow for lots of oils and processed food. And this is the eating continuum that we teach too. And I love this way of thinking about diet, like diet changes. And I mean, it's just a spectrum. It's never exactly the same day after day. We just know through lots and lots of research and observing groups of people for, like 3 generations of data now, that the healthiest people around the world that live the longest, they have the lowest rates of chronic disease, the healthiest weights, the foundation of their diet for the longest time has been a plant-based diet. The foundation of the healthiest people, it's fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, they drink water, they eat nuts and seeds. And it's not to say these people never have meat, but this is the foundation. Maybe 80, 90% of what most of their dishes are is these fresh plant foods. And then on the flip side of that, when we look at cultures of people, populations that have the worst health around the world, the most chronic disease, the most overweight and obesity, people living shorter lives, they eat kind of the standard American diet, a diet that's loaded with processed food, excess, meat, dairy, eggs, excess alcohol, and sugar sweetened caffeinated beverages. And with the caffeine, people are always like, what? Don't take my coffee. It's very rare that people are just having black coffee and black tea. It's added with, there's creamers and fats and sugars and all that added to it. And that's kind of the energy drinks and all that. So just to give you a taste of what I'm talking about here and show you what these diets look like along the continuum, on the far left, this is kind of an example of the standard American dietary pattern. You've got the fast food breakfast, the box lunch here where you've got chips, cookies, soda, and then for dinner, maybe a burger and fries and a soda as well. And you can't forget the ice cream. So that's like the far left, pretty standard way of eating here in the US. And then somewhere down the middle of the continuum, got some pictures popping up here, or even like a little bit to the right of the middle. It's got lots of homemade foods. That's something to observe here. Is a lot of these are homemade, but we've made some switches. You've got eggs, but they're loaded with vegetables. You've got some peppers, tomatoes. You could add garlic, onion to that. Adding more vegetables will make it healthier. You have a sandwich, but we've switched it over to whole grain bread. We're utilizing tuna instead of this processed deli meat, fruit as the side, and maybe drinking water as the beverage there. And then for dinner, We've got a piece of salmon, a little bit of noodles, and then half of the plate coming from fruits and vegetables, and then maybe like a plain non-fat yogurt with some fruit. I'd say this is much healthier than a lot of people kind of eat on a daily basis, depending. And then the far, far right, looking at whole food, plant-based, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Breakfast, this is an easy go-to. One of my favorites is having oatmeal with a variety of fruit on top, some nuts and seeds, sweeten it up with some banana. For lunch, you've got a nice colorful salad. The more color, the better. Soups and stews are also a great one this time of year. And then for dinner, you've got like fajita style veggies, some beans, and then that grain that you see there is bulgur. You know, you could do any type of whole grain. But this is just showing you along the continuum, and it's just making steps more in this direction. I'm going to have Jasmine post an activity that I usually doing. Lisa says she's hungry. Me too. This is a tough job because I'm always talking about food and thinking about it. But I have an activity called Score Your Plant-Based Plate where you can fill out and kind of score your current diet and see where there's maybe some deficiency, whether it's whole grains. I show you kind of the amount of servings you should be having in a day. And then you can identify gaps, and it's just trying to make moves along this continuum. All right, so a little bit more on the standard American diet here. So when we look at the data and how people eat in the United States, this is what it looks like. 63% of our calories in a day or the foods that we eat are coming from processed food. They've had a lot of the good stuff removed and a lot of the bad stuff has been added. So fibers removed, some of the natural vitamins and minerals that are in these foods. They're kind of hyper processed and broken down. And then we add salt, sugar, and fats to it among, you know, a whole bunch of other additives. And we become very reliant on that. I think that's a big part of the problem with our diets here in the US is the processed. 25% comes from animal-derived foods. And then really only 12% is coming from plant food, with half of that being processed, which is kind of a weird, there's a difference here. Processed plant food would be, you know, some of those, like a lot of what's sold at like Whole Foods or like the Kind granola bar, you know, some of these are really popular, but, you know, it's got oats in there, nuts and seeds, maybe some dried fruit, and then there's chocolate on top, or we've added sugar and salt to it. So you still got some of the good stuff, but then we're still adding some of the junk. So really only 6% of our diet is coming from fresh food, having fruit, having, you know, the whole vegetables, cooking from scratch, having beans and grains. We just don't eat very much fresh plant food anymore. Okay, and then this is that slide I was showing you, kind of examples of what more plant-based diets can look like. So some of these maybe you've heard of, like the DASH diet, stands for Dietary Approaches to Stop Hypertension. I believe it was created in the 90s by the American Heart Association to reverse high blood pressure. Very successful. Mostly a plant-based diet, lots of fruits and vegetables, whole grains. We've got some beans in there, a little bit of lean protein and low-fat dairy type of plant-based eating, mostly plants. Same with Mediterranean. Although it's funny when people think Mediterranean, or when I talk to people, they focus on the fatty fish, feta cheese, red wine, and olive oil. And they're like, okay, I love my new diet. But we kind of miss the whole foundational piece is this fresh whole plant food. And I love this visual. This is from the Canadian guidelines. They created this healthy plate, very plant-based. I love that. It's a great graphic. You do have some meats in there, and this kind of shows you portion, but there's lots of beans and nuts and seeds as the protein. Whole grains is a quarter of the plate, and then half of our plate coming from fruits or vegetables or both. And then an example of an entirely plant-based dish here. And the reason we promote this way of eating is it is the most researched and evidence-based, going back to that eating continuum. We know that when you eat the most plants, you have the most health. And it's not necessarily what you take away from the diet as so much what you add. If you can add all these plant foods and try to meet the recommended servings, you're going to be doing a lot for your health and your weight, you know, your waistline, how you feel, brain fog, all of that stuff can be some of the benefits of eating more plants, which we'll talk about here in a sec. Who feels like this? This is a funny visual. I think a lot of us do. We think, you know, unfortunately with nutrition, a lot of people get the weight loss industry confused with nutritional science. The weight loss industry has really come in and made us very confused about how we should be eating. Things are constantly changing. We're getting all this promoted, media and messaging that we can't keep up with. We hear testimonials, all this great stuff. But I want you guys to know the weight loss industry is nothing more than a business. They make billions of dollars every single year getting repeat business by keeping us very confused. And, these are very hard to follow long term. 95%, when we look at the research, 95% of diets fail within 2 years. That means you lose the weight, you're good for a while, and then you gain all that weight back. 66% of those people gain more weight back than where they even started. It just doesn't work for a lot of people. And this is how I feel as this guy over here. These diets and all the influencers and all the people selling supplements and fit tea and all this, it gets the attention because we live in a world where we want results, we want weight loss, and we want it now. And so there's a fix for that. They pour a lot of money and media into it, and that's what always gets the attention and leaves us very confused. But the science-based diet advice to eat healthy, exercise more, make lifestyle changes, have slow, sustainable weight loss, it's not appealing. It doesn't get the attention, and it's not very profitable too. And then also I put down here, just because something can cause weight loss does not mean that it's healthy. In fact, a lot of these are very unhealthy and can have long-term metabolic consequences when you do some of these diets. So kind of knowing the difference, and you kind of have to remove yourself and be savvy and skeptical of all of these new diets that are coming out, because it's a big profitable moneymaker. Okay, so the benefits of plant-based eating, rolling through. So I love this visual, and I want you guys to remember this when you're making choices about what you're making for dinner, when you're meal planning, if you go out to eat. Every bite you take matters. We've kind of been raised in this world where we think it's all pipes and it goes in one end and out the other, and nutrients don't really matter. But we're learning that is the complete opposite of the case. All of these nutrients are interacting with different organs and tissues and cells every time you put something in your mouth. So are you choosing foods that are fighting disease, foods that are full of vitamins and minerals and phytonutrients and antioxidants that literally stop disease-promoting molecules and can reverse inflammation and damage that's been done in the body, promote healing? Or are you choosing foods that are continuously poking the wound and making things worse? Every bite matters. It's never too late or too early to start making changes and voting for your health with the foods that you put in. Okay, so one of the main benefits, and I'm going to go through kind of the top ones. I could spend a lot of time here, but well, for time's sake, we're going to roll through. So weight management with plant-based eating. So here I have a couple visuals of some different foods, and I want to ask you guys if anyone wants to take a stab at it. What do you think these foods have in common? Any takers?
Same calories.
Mm-hmm. Very good. I don't know who said that, but perfect answer. Same calories. So these are all visuals of 500 calories. So 500 calories and 5 heads of romaine lettuce. You get 4.3 slices of cheddar cheese. You could have 5 whole sweet potatoes, 500 raspberries. I mean, that's a lot of food compared to, 9 Oreo cookies. And so, thinking about what do you think is going to be the most filling and take up the most space in your stomach. So this is about what the size of our stomach is, having that visual. Our stomach can expand to hold about 1 quart of food. And why plant-based foods help with weight loss is they're bulky. They take up a lot of space on our plate and in our stomach for the lowest amount of calories. They are dilute in calories. These foods are loaded. If you look over here, this is the amount of food calories per pound. They are loaded with fiber and water, which are 0-calorie nutrients. Think about leafy greens. They're mostly water and fiber. That's why you can eat a pound of them and only get 100 calories. Same with some of the vegetables and fruits. I love this scale here. But I mean, why this works is research shows that we are very consistent about the weight of food, the weight and volume of food that we eat day after day. It's about filling up the stomach. We have like a baseline and consistent amount that we eat. And we eat somewhere between like 3 and 5 pounds of food per day. And that's what fills us up. It's about stretching out the stomach and activating the stretch receptors. And then there's a message that's related to the brain. And then there's this whole hormone cascading effect of fullness. but you got to fill up your stomach. And that's why a lot of these diets fail. We don't have this magic numerical tracking system in our body that says, oh, I've hit my 1,500 calories for the day, I'm full. It's not about that. It's about the space and the filling power of these foods. That's what tells your body that you're full and satisfied. And so we've got some great charts. We do teach an entire class called Eat More, Weigh Less. That's around the calorie density approach to weight loss. And that's why more plant-based foods work. So another big benefit is heart disease. Number one killer here in the United States. Oops, I just dropped this. Heart disease, it's, what is it, like every 90 seconds someone dies of heart disease here in the United States. It is a problem. Even if you don't have a family history or you don't have high cholesterol levels, just be wary of heart disease. We live in a world that encourages cardiovascular disease because the foods that are available, we don't have to move anymore. These foods are loaded with saturated fat, trans fats, they're low in fiber, they're high in sodium, all the types of foods that trigger heart disease. And a plant-based diet is really good at delaying disease progression and just preventing us from ever developing this because it's low in saturated fat and trans fats and sodium, and it's high in fiber and some of these vitamins and minerals that protect against disease. Can lower cholesterol, blood pressure, improve overall circulation, and inflammation is a big one tied to it as well. Prediabetes and type 2 diabetes. I think we're up to almost 70% of American adults either have prediabetes or type 2 diabetes at this point. It's out of control, and it's definitely on the rise. And a big part of prediabetes and type 2 diabetes, there is a little bit of a genetic component, but a lot of it comes back to lifestyle. And we tend to think that diabetes is only a sugar problem, but I will tell you, and we do have an entire class on diabetes in your diet, it's a number of things, and dietary fat is going to play a role in insulin resistance and kind of clogging up the cells and not letting insulin be able to do its job and let glucose into these cells, and it keeps it out in the bloodstream. And so when you really clean up your diet, get a lot of the processed junk out and high fat meat and dairy, you can bring the blood sugar down. You can even get off medications and get out of the prediabetes zone. Cancers, we've got a lot of research to support, especially with like slowing progression and delay, prevention of certain cancers, breast cancer, prostate cancer, and colorectal cancer. Kind of plant-based diet really promoted for those. Kidney disease. This is also something it's kind of a silent disease for a lot of people, and I do teach a class once a month on chronic kidney disease and the current recommendations that are out there. But if you've got early stage kidney disease, a plant-based diet is a great diet to follow because it's going to help you manage your protein intake. It's lower in sodium and some of the other nutrients of concern. It's high in fiber, which is very protective against kidney disease. And so that can be another class because we do not want to end up on dialysis. That's brain health is another benefit. So we see lower rates of Alzheimer's and dementia. Overall can improve mood, and some patients report, being able to get off antidepressants and anxiety medication, and you lower your stroke risk because we're taking care of the blood vessels. Gut health and immune system, you're fostering a healthy gut, and we're learning that your gut bacteria has a lot to do with immune function and immunity, which is more important than ever right now, and can cut back on medications. I'm going to keep powering through. See that we're getting low on time. And then when it comes to cost, so a plant-based diet is really one of the cheaper ways that you can eat if you're eating these types of foods. I think beans are the cheapest food you can buy at the grocery store, then grains, and then, depending on the year and where you shop for your produce, those are about as cheap as it gets. Where it gets expensive is when you start dabbling in these foods. If you go to Whole Foods, that store cracks me up because it's processed health food. There is not a very impressive produce section there, or their bulk sections like this big. It's just a lot of processed stuff with really good labeling. It's organic, it's healthy, it's plant-based. That's where it gets really, really expensive. If you're just sticking to the basics, it's about the cheapest way you can eat. Now, where people get confused, it's less of an issue about money, and it's more of an issue of making time to start preparing healthy foods. Okay, so some nutrients of concern. I'll roll through these pretty quick, mainly covering the protein topic. So I want you guys to know that all foods contain protein or amino acids. Fruits, vegetables, grains, beans, nuts, seeds, meat, dairy, all foods will have amino acids. Like if someone has a random pineapple allergy, It's the protein that they're allergic to in those foods. They all have proteins and they add up a lot quicker over the course of a day. When we look at the research with vegetarian eating, vegan eating, they're even getting 70% more protein than what's actually recommended via the USDA. Knowing how much you need is important, which I put down here, the calculation. Oh, this is kind of cut off here. But on average, the patients that I see need somewhere between 55 and 75 grams per day. It's just based on your body weight. And this meal plan here is showing you 60 grams. These are all plant foods. It adds up very quickly. In fact, I mean, we just live in a very protein obsessed culture. Most people in the US are consuming 2 to 3 times as much protein as what's recommended. And we're seeing that is tied to a number of issues in chronic diseases. A lot of athletes are making this transition, and kind of the moral of the story for why they're doing so is their endurance is far superior to what it used to be, quicker recovery. You know, they get this second win during athletic performances. They're able to gain weight and muscle just fine. If you haven't seen Game Changers, the documentary, I really recommend it. It's kind of focused on athletics and plant-based eating. Okay, and then calcium is another one I get questions about, because we associate healthy bones with drinking milk or cheese or, you know, having dairy. And calcium is actually a very abundant mineral. You're going to find it in most foods. It adds up over the course of a day. I've got some examples here to show you some foods. A lot of the plant-based milks now are even going to have more calcium than regular cow's milk. But you get it in leafy greens, you get it in beans and nuts and seeds, variety of foods. And what we see with osteoporosis, as we get, you know, older, we can be at greater risk of fractures and that. It's not a calcium deficiency disease. Here in the US, we eat plenty of calcium with our milk and cheeses and all the foods we eat. It's osteoporosis, and avoiding that is about avoiding the loss of calcium from the bones. Certain things will cause calcium to excrete out of your bones, which I've listed here. Smoking cigarettes, excess alcohol, having high intakes of animal protein and sodium, phosphorus, which you get in a lot of processed foods, processed meats, sodas, lack of exercise, especially resistance, and lack of sunlight. So that's a big thing to address. Any good doctor would tell you to start working on those. You know, you do want to be getting adequate calcium, but that seems to be the kind of the bigger issue. Okay. And then some supplements to consider. These are kind of ones that I recommend to, I'd say, majority of patients, especially kind of working with older patients over at cardiac rehab, is vitamin D and B12. And then some people might need a supplement with omega-3 fats. Vitamin D is a sunshine vitamin. There are a few foods that will have vitamin D, but if you're not getting that good exposure daily to the hands, the arms, the face, some people say your legs need to be exposed. I probably won't be walking around in shorts and a tank top anytime soon. A vitamin D supplement could be something to consider. It's always good to get tested with your doctor and find out, but about 2,000 IUs seems to be a safe limit for people. Then we have vitamin B12, which is good for nerve function and making red blood cells. You could become anemic if you become deficient in B12. It is cautioned if you completely avoid meat or dairy. It could take a couple of years, but you could become deficient. It's produced by the bacteria that's in soil, which a lot of animals kind of ingest some of that, and so it can be found in meat and dairy. Or if you're over the age of 50, supplementation is recommended because you can't digest it as good. And then if you're taking metformin or acid reflux, that can inhibit. And 2,500 micrograms is what's recommended per week. And then omega-3 fats, good for reducing inflammation and brain health. You can get it for a variety of foods, doesn't take much, or supplementation, and I recommend like an algae-based one. All the omega-3 that we get from fish, they say originates in algae, so that kind of goes straight to the source there. Okay, so tips for getting started, and then I'm going to show you how you guys can get kind of connected and maybe take some of the other classes that we have available. But kind of my favorite tips to tell people is start small and just take it one step at a time. In order to transition to a more plant-based diet, I always recommend this. When you try to jump in too quickly and too extreme, it's not sustainable. You know, pick maybe 2 meals a week that you want to do a plant-based meal, or 2 new recipes, or maybe just Tackle breakfast. That's a pretty easy one. Switch to like a nice smoothie in the morning or a nice bowl of oats. So we've got ideas for, scrambled tofu or some of those. Kind of get that up to speed, and then maybe start tackling lunch and finding some lunches that you like. Rome wasn't built in a day. Just start making this transition. That's how we make the most change. The next one, find plant-based versions of your favorite recipes. There are thousands of resources online with a plant-based alternative to pretty much anything that you enjoy, whether it's mac and cheese or lasagna, taco night. Use Google to your advantage. Just type in whole food plant-based tacos, and you'll find thousands of recipes out there, blogs, all of that. Stay up to speed on your education. Take some classes with us over here at Lifestyle Medicine, some cooking classes, maybe get yourself a cookbook. There's a lot of documentaries out there to read up. You can follow plant-based Facebook pages or Instagram accounts. Just kind of keep, getting that information coming in. You'll get ideas for recipes and listen to, testimonials and all that. Remembering your why is also very important. Why do you want to start eating this way? Do you want to turn your health around? Do you want to, lose weight? What is the purpose? And just knowing that, I'm sure you guys kind of go through some of that with the weight loss challenge, but this is an important one to remember and keep coming back to it. It's what's going to keep you going. And also finding recipes you like. Switching your diet doesn't have to be painful and dull and boring. If you don't find recipes you enjoy, you're not gonna stick with it. So we've got, there's tons on there. And if you have a dish and you hate it, never make it again. There are those nutrients in a bunch of different foods and different combinations and recipes that are out there that you will like. So there's those. And then some of the classes that we have available. So this is, we've got Intro to Plant-Based. All of our nutrition education classes are $10, and then our cooking classes are $15. We do our cooking classes Wednesdays from noon to 1. I do some Monday nights from 6 to 7 p.m. Got a variety of time slots and schedule, which is all online, which I'm going to show you how to get to here in a second. Also, something I wanted to point out is next Wednesday from noon to 1, myself and our chef over here in Meridian are going to do a plant-powered cooking class. So we're going to show you some ideas for some holiday themed foods that you could, take to Christmas party, or just some kind of good seasonal foods. We're going to have a variety of recipes. It's going to be live, so wish us luck. But that'll be next Wednesday from noon to 1, and you can easily sign up online. And then we have the CHIP program, which stands for the Complete Health Improvement Program, which is a big benefit for employees. But CHIP it's a lifestyle intervention course. You sign up, you go through it with a group of people. It's 10 weeks long, so we meet twice a week for 10 weeks. Most of it's taught by registered dietitians. And it's a lot of nutrition information, but also, making behavior change. And we talk a little bit about exercise and the pillars of health, but you just get that kind of constant touch. We meet twice a week and we have open discussions, and you kind of meet some other people that are in the program. We do a lab draw at the beginning. So we do like your lipid panel, your A1C, we do your blood pressure, we weigh you, measure you, do all that at the beginning and at the end. So you can kind of do this science experiment on yourself on, starting a plant-based diet. You get lots of education. You get a cookbook, a textbook, a workbook. We've got these really cool videos that we watch together. It's a really well-rounded program. And if you're serious about making changes and you kind of feel like, oh, I don't know where to start, but you kind of need something maybe a little bit more intensive, this is a really great program to jump into. If you have a BMI over 30 as a St. Luke's employee, you can take it for $89. For everyone else, it's closer to $400. So it's a pretty great deal. And we see people on the program, they lose about 10 pounds, cholesterol comes down, A1C comes down, and you're just kind of set up a little bit better to keep moving forward. Okay, and then the last thing I want to show you, I'm going to take you to our website here. All right. Okay, so to get to this page, we are going to stluke'sonline.org/classes. I know it looks a lot longer here, but if you just type in .org/classes, it will take you to this page. And where I recommend going from here is clicking on the Lifestyle Medicine tab. And then, I mean, we have a lot of classes that are available to the community that aren't just on nutrition. There are quite a bit in here, but just to kind of narrow it in on, I'll either type in nutrition or cooking, and this will take you to our page. We've got a whole grains class today, and then you can just simply register online. And with our cooking classes, it's all demonstration. You get to watch us prepare and talk tips and tricks. You get a ton of education. Like the whole grains class, we show you how to prepare them and shop for them and cook them. But really what it's about is, how do I incorporate these into meals? Or the same with the beans. We don't really show you how to cook beans. Like that's pretty easy to figure out. But we show you how you can incorporate beans into almost every dish. We even give you ideas for breakfast recipes, how you can incorporate beans if you're feeling really savvy. Just, you know, what to do with some of these foods and flavor profiles and all that. And you get some good recipes. And yeah, so we've got a variety of classes. We've got a new one that's on meal planning and batch cooking that people are loving. And then yeah, we've just got some education-based classes. Nutrition tips for success is like how you can set up your kitchen a little bit better for plant-based eating. Lots of resources for you. So hopefully you can check these out, and I can see in some of these classes. I think that's it. Short and sweet.
All right. Well, thank you, Josie. I'm sure there's some questions that people have here, and I'm going to look in the chat box here. I was kind of keeping track as we went. There was a question regarding the milk slide about any recommendations in preference and favorite milk.
Oh, preference for my favorite milk. I alternate between soy milk and an unsweetened almond milk. And that's something to watch out for when you're buying plant-based milks, is they can add a lot of sugar to them. But so yeah, looking for that. But soy milk I find is a little bit more versatile in cooking. Almond milk adds kind of an almondy flavor, but is pretty low calorie and has some good, you know, nutrients in there. So I kind of switch between those two.
Great, thank you. There's some questions about how to sign up for CHIP, and we'll throw those in. We'll throw the links in the chat box here.
Okay.
Any other? A question. Do I need a 0.8 grams per kilogram for my current weight or goal weight? I think she's referring to how much
Protein.
Protein, yes.
Yeah, that's a great question. I use what we call an adjusted body weight factor, because we don't want to be feeding protein to, you know, body fat stores. So there, I mean, easily you can go online and find an adjusted body weight calculator, and that'll just find, it kind of averages like the ideal body weight based on your height and your weight and your stature versus your current weight. And so it kind of just finds like the average of those, and then that's the factor that I like to use for people. It's a good place to start.
Perfect, thank you. And then one last one I see, Lindsay writes, how do I transition to plant-based when I have tried this in the past? I feel gassy, bloated, and crampy.
I feel you on that. I went through a similar symptoms when I started a plant-based diet long ago. And the best advice I have for that is, I mean, when I experienced issues, I jumped in 100% day one. And it can be very shocking to the system when you do that, when you've kind of got this pretty processed standard American diet. Sure, maybe you have some vegetables here and there, but you are going to be eating so much more fiber than you've ever eaten before. And your body can't really handle that fiber amount until you've built up a really strong microbiome. You have to grow and get this diverse colony of bacteria, and it takes time to get there. And so just kind of adding, you know, one more high fiber plant-based food, letting your body adjust to that, and then transitioning. It's easy to want to be totally gung-ho and start right away, but then that might just turn you, you know, totally turn you around because you feel terrible and you might not stick with it. So just adding, you know, a little bit of time. Maybe again, it's like starting with breakfast. And if it's way too extreme, maybe cut back on the amount of fiber and just slowly transitioning into it is what I tell people, because that is a problem. Some people can do it and they're totally fine. But then others, it takes some adjusting and getting used to. But once you give it time, you will start to adapt and feel better. Great. And I see there's the link to the CHIP program. We have an info session with Mac actually on Monday. She'll be hosting an info session from 12 to 12:30 if you guys want to do that. It's just a half hour, just more information on the CHIP program. I'm not sure if you can't register, if they don't let you register online for that info session, I'm assuming you can let one of us know and we can send you the link and the information on how it's totally free. We can easily get you that. And then we have a class starting. We'll have another info session January 3rd. And then that following week, I think is the 10th, we'll have a CHIP course starting with Mac, which will be great.
Yeah, Mac is pretty awesome. Any last questions here? All right, I'm not seeing any, Josie. Really appreciate your time today. Any last words or anything?
Any last words? I just appreciate all of you guys joining today. This is a good sized group. I'm always happy to put the good word out there and show what kind of programs that are available. And I'm easy to find on Teams. I'm always on my computer these days, so I'm happy to answer questions or help get you to the right classes or get you the right links if you're ever wanting to take some of these. I'm always happy to help.